Hey all, how you doing? So I've been meaning to do a corona video for a while now. I came down with corona about the 18th of March. Symptoms showed about 22nd of March. And I don't want to go on about the disease and how it feels or what it's like to go to the hospital with it. You can probably see loads of those videos out there now. What I want to talk about is just how to actually get through it, what the positives are, and I don't want to scare anybody, but I also want to be truthful about what this disease is and how it differs from something like the cold or the flu, and especially just relate it to younger people. So I'm 33 myself, and I came down with some of the more severe symptoms and had to go to the hospital. Eventually got discharged and am all right, but still struggling through it. So the main thing that I want to say is that there's quite a few people out there now that are giving you the right information. They're telling you it's not something you want to get. It's something you want to follow protocols on. You really want to avoid the spread, especially to elderly people. And the reason why won't be immediately obvious to everybody. So I just want to make it clear the difference between this and a flu. Okay, so this disease is more like running a marathon or doing some very strenuous physical activity. I think it's because of how the virus works, because it's a zoological disease that's passed from other animals to us, and so it isn't exactly adapted to us, and as a result our body and its mechanisms for fighting back isn't as finely tuned. It doesn't immediately react to what's happening, and when it does react, it overreacts, underreacts, overreacts, underreacts, and the result of that is you sort of get thrown back and forth between really severe symptoms and very mild ones. And the result is more like a physical, I don't know, fight with the actual disease. But you're actually not fighting the disease. The symptoms are just going back and forth, trying to get a handle on what they can actually do to handle the situation. You get shortness of breath, so that reduces the oxygen saturation in your blood, which makes it much more like you've just gone for a run and you can't catch your breath. So it doesn't necessarily feel like it's heavy on your chest. A lot of the chest pains that a lot of people experience comes from stomach acids and reflux, that sort of thing. So having some antacids on hand is a really good idea, just to help keep that down, or paracetamol can be used to keep that down. You will get fevers. In my case, I didn't get that till later, and that's your body making it inhospitable for the virus, so they're not like happy as a bug, in your body. It makes it uncomfortable both for you and the virus. And that makes it so that your body's actually fighting off the virus, which is a good thing. So it's a good thing if you have a fever. So you don't necessarily want to take paracetamol or something like that reduces the fever unless it's too severe, because that's going to help. And with everything with this virus, it's more about your body recognizing it and being able to react correctly. And if it can't react correctly, that's when the virus keeps being prolonged and going for a longer time. So you get worse symptoms, and that sort of bipolar, sort of it being totally fine, then it being really bad the next day. So what you want to expect if you get the virus is to have a really strong peak early on. So you'll be fine, and then you'll be suddenly hit with the virus's symptoms really suddenly. If you get shortness of breath, things like that, I would suggest just sitting up, because if you lay down in your bed or something like that, it'll feel like you've got a weight on your chest. So if you sit up, take a very comfortable position, If you can, if you know that you've maybe got something, prepare some meals ahead of time because you're not going to be able to move around a lot. Have some antacids on hand, paracetamol on hand, and juices on hand. So for myself, my blood sugar shot down like crazy when I had this. When I first got this, I actually became hypoglycemic, which isn't usual for me at all. It's just a natural fact that you're just using so much energy when you're fighting the virus. For people that are diabetic, it'll be the opposite, of course. Like, you wouldn't want to have sugary sweets and stuff like that because high blood sugar can lead to having a less effective immune system. So, people with diabetes have to really talk to their GPs and make sure they're handling it correctly. But for most people that are young and fit and you're going to weather out this storm, what I'd say do is get loads of supplies next to you, loads of water, because you're going to have to keep hydrated. Make sure you've got antacids and paracetamol. The good thing about antacids is if you start to get pain in your chest, you take an antacid, it goes away. Then that means it's your stomach acid. It's not anything in your chest, which will frighten you at first. When it comes to being hard to breathe, don't panic. Because if you panic and you tire your body out, you tire out your diaphragm, that becomes a problem. So you want to just maintain calm, because just because it's difficult breathing, it doesn't necessarily mean you've got something in your lungs, that your lungs are inflamed or anything bad like that. It just means that this virus, a lot of your cells are going to require a lot more oxygen than they normally do. And that's going to be taking away from your breath, much like if you're running or jogging. And this disease is a much more physical disease than fighting the flu or the cold. So you're going to be panting. If it gets really bad, you might get disorientated or dizzy. That's sort of the point where if that gets sort of severe and you don't know if you're going to stay conscious or not, don't be afraid that if you pass out, you're going to die or something like that. Just think, okay, it's hard to breathe, all that sort of thing. Most of the oxygen is going to fighting the virus. That was a way of helping me calm down in that sort of situation. You call the medics, you go with the ambulance. If you have COVID-19, the disease, then obviously you'll get some x-rays and a bunch of blood taken, and they will look for any infections in your blood, as well as a different array of tests, and checking to see that you haven't got any abnormalities in your lungs, basically. So this disease, it has 3 different components that you want to look for. One is the severity of your symptoms. So if your symptoms are severe, it's going to take a lot of toll on your body. So if it starts taking a toll on your body, it might cause you to get exhausted. That might be muscle fatigue, it might be mental fatigue, it might be just it might attack some sort of pre-existing condition that you have, or whether it be age. That's also a thing that it can target, just because you don't have enough stamina to handle the kind of physical weathering that you go through. That's if the symptoms are severe. Okay, then there's a second component to it, which is the complications. So if you can handle even severe symptoms without any complications, then you're probably fine. You're probably just going to get through it. The complication, obviously, that people talk about is pneumonia and a cytokine storm, which is when your body's immune system is fighting so hard that it starts hitting everything or attacking everything. It's going all out in a Hail Mary to try and protect you. and that can fill the lung up with fluids. So do not confuse that complication with the initial onset of shortness of breath. So shortness of breath is something that comes from your body taking up more oxygen than it's taking in. When it comes to the cytokine storm and pneumonia, that's a complication that can arise in certain cases, and that's going to happen a little bit later than the first onset of symptoms. So I would say that during the first day that you get bad symptoms, don't be too terrified, because that day is more, it's telling you how severe your symptoms probably are and how to prepare going forwards. So if you have antacids, you have paracetamol, you have drinks, juices, water, you have prepared meals ready for you, and it should be sustenance. It shouldn't just be like canned food or anything like that. You want to make sure that it's actual nice food, because you'll lose a bit of an appetite when you're going through it. So if you start to understand the kind of complication, the kind of symptoms you have, then you just have to be vigilant about complications. So for me, I didn't opt to go to the hospital on the first visit from the paramedics. They treated me for the hypoglycemia that I got, which was a complication and would have made it pretty bad. And then the second time I went in because I wanted to make sure that at the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th day that I wasn't actually getting pneumonia, because the shortness of breath was just continuing. I was cleared for that, so I was like, okay, good, I'm free of complications, then, not too much to worry about. I then have to just recover. So after complications, it comes to outcomes. And even with the complications, the outcomes can be quite good. So that's where you see 20% of people going into hospital that get the disease. And then, most of them being discharged after a period of time. So the people that get discharged, it's because whatever complications that they did have, and are being helped through, a lot of our medicine can actually handle. So whether it be through antibacterial drugs, that kind of thing, then you're going to get through some of the complications, the infections, whether it be you need a little bit of oxygen therapy to increase the oxygen saturation in your blood, whether it be that you need something that helps with respiration, or whether it be that you need to be intubated, which is obviously worst case scenario for anybody. Those things, they have outcomes, expected outcomes individually, and those sort of result in the kind of results that you get, the outcomes that you get. So even though you get a complication, it doesn't mean that there's a specific outcome. It just means that you have to be on the lookout, and you have to be vigilant in every single scenario. So basically those three different things: you've got symptoms, measure your symptoms, and make sure to treat yourself correctly when you have symptoms. Secondly, you're going to have some complications if the symptoms are severe enough. So you need to be vigilant and keep an eye on them, and basically get yourself checked out. At the very least, contact your GP or anything like that and talk through it, and they'll help sort you out. Then lastly, you have outcomes. Okay, so the outcomes will depend on the complications that come up with your specific situation. So if you have pre-existing conditions or age, you've got to understand that complications are more likely, and that's where a lot of the danger comes from this disease. And that is also why we need clear hospital beds and that sort of thing, because clear hospital beds means we're able to treat more complications and then get better outcomes. And that's essentially what we're after. This disease, different from other diseases, I would describe it as much more physical than any other flu or cold that you would get. It's also a lot cleaner, so you don't get a lot of mucus, you don't seem very sick. You'll have periods of the day that you seem completely fine, and then you'll have times where you're absolutely, maybe you can't even move, and it's very difficult to breathe, and you won't be able to even watch something on television or anything like that because you'll be so uncomfortable. So it's not like bad flus where you're sort of just delirious and sort of kicking about in your sleep and just trying to get through it. It's more active, you're conscious, you're right there with it, and you're just trying to maintain your breathing like you're being forced to run a marathon or something along those lines. It's definitely a very serious disease, and the reason why it's so serious is because you're not young and healthy and able to just keep running, you fall down behind the horse, and then you start getting dragged. And that's why elderly people and people like over 50 have a very tough time. So I was told by the paramedics that if I was 10, 20 years older with the severity of the symptoms that I had, it wouldn't have been so fun. But now let's get to the positives. So I don't think it's positive to let this run. And I know I'm being sort of ironic in like saying I'm going to get to positives and then saying something negative, but we shouldn't let this run through society to try and get herd immunity. That's a bad idea. It's like saying, yeah, let's just put everybody in a marathon and see if they sink or swim. It's not a good idea. It's really bad idea. This disease is no joke, and you really do not want to get severe symptoms, because it is extremely likely that you'll get complications in a lot of cases, and that seems to prove out. So you just don't want it like that. If you do get it, you just try to be calm, and that comes to the good news. Okay, so while this is a very physical disease, I think that is also the positive. So this isn't as mysterious of a disease as you would normally see, like on a movie or something, where it's completely uncontrollable, we don't know what it's doing. While a lot of media sources say we don't know what it's doing and that sort of thing, the truth is this disease has a very physical toll, and the physical toll leads to the complications. So what I would say in regards to that is you need to stay in the mindset of someone that's going to go through a physical performance of some kind, which is you need to stay very calm and not exhaust yourself. So if someone's going to tell me I'm going to run 40 kilometers today, I would say that's absolutely insane. Why would I do that? And then they say, okay, let's go. Now at the start of that journey, if I start saying, no, I'm going to give up, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to be dragged around, I can't do this, I can't handle this, I can't blah, 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 then that's going to make it like you're getting dragged, and that's going to become an issue. So you kind of have to pick up your feet, and you have to get a mindset that is going to keep you in it for the long haul. And you've got to keep that mindset as best you can throughout the entire period of time that you're sick, so that you can stay vigilant, so that you can be on top of issues, that you can make the best of the productive time that you have for preparing meals for the next day and that sort of thing, so that you can then at that next day, when you're bedridden, keep your energy up and that sort of thing. So you've just got to be vigilant and persistent and stay focused, and throughout that process of handling your symptoms, you can get through it that way. or reduce the severity of the complications you face by the way that you face the symptoms. And that hopefully leads to some better outcomes. Now, that's positive because it's not a mystery. And I believe that this disease, because it isn't from humans originally and that it's from other animals, it doesn't have a grip on us yet. And because of that, it's all up to the probability and the statistics of our immune system actually bumping into the disease and sort of fighting it off, almost like filtration or an accidental process where it's like, okay, I found it now, here's what I do, here's when I react, here's when I kick into action. It's not going to be able to just find it, create symptoms, flush it out of your system. It's going to have to bump into it. And that's going to make the process a little bit longer. But in the same way, the disease has to sort of play by the same rules. So it has to follow very physical rules, and it has to play by those rules, and it can't just circumvent those rules. So for example, a rule of this disease is that it cannot infect you after you've disinfected surfaces, because it has an oil-based outer shell, and that allows you to destroy it and wash it off. It cannot maintain in our system if we've got a good immune system and it prolongs for, I don't know, about a month's time or something like that. It's going to get filtered out. And because a lot of the complications are sort of coming from a physical sort of nature, if we do exercise our own power correctly, we can remain more vigilant than other people, and we can improve outcomes a little bit that way, which is good. So you just want to remain vigilant, and while you're going through all these symptoms and troubles and struggles, make sure you got everything close at hand. Antacids stops the chest pains. You get a really bad headache, take a paracetamol. You get a fever, hang through it. Hang through the fever, because fever is a good thing. You want to keep that fever going for a while, and then once it gets a bit too high or something like that, then you take something like a paracetamol, brings it down. Don't have things like too much caffeine or anything like that, because this disease, it can increase your heart rate really quickly, and something like caffeine can start your heart rate beating and just make it worse. So you just want to be careful with stuff like that, okay? When it comes to alcohol, don't get drunk, don't get hangovers or anything. It doesn't help cure it or anything. And I think if you drink too much, it actually lowers your monocytes, which actually makes it so that you are more susceptible to the disease. So you don't want to lower your immune system by partying too hard. You want to get a lot of sleep. So with this disease, it becomes a little bit difficult to sleep. You'll wake up earlier than you normally do and things like that. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you go to sleep again, because having enough sleep allows a lot of cellular repair in your body, which is going to be important as cells are destroyed. It also allows your immune system to be at its strongest. So that's why it's important to make sure you get your sleep. You want to have a lot of water, because a lot of water helps you flush it out, flush out a lot of waste products that are building up in your body from all the destruction of all the cells and stuff in your body. So you want that. You want to get some fresh air as well. So right now I'm getting some fresh air. 2 weeks ago I could barely speak. I couldn't speak more than like a few words at a time, but now I can speak. I make sure to get outside just for some fresh air, or just open the windows. It helps you to take full inhalations with your lungs, in and out, so that you don't get any sort of infections in your lungs. Like, so for example, when you have a normal flu or a normal cold, the problem is you might just sit there and have your chest inactive, and then that starts to lead to like the laryngitis or that sort of thing where you get infections in your lungs. So you want to avoid that by just taking some breaths, also just opening the windows, that sort of thing, so that you can get some fresh air, and that'll help you out. You want to have some things on hand, like if possible, have some fruits, have something nice. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of vegetarians, a lot of vegans, a lot of whatever out there, but make sure what you're having during the course of your symptoms isn't canned, or isn't the other stuff that you got just for surviving. Make sure it's some fresh stuff that's actually enjoyable, because that dopamine hit or whatever, it's going to help you recover some of your strength, and it's going to make you be like, okay, I got this, I got the next step, I know how to handle this. And lastly, I just want to talk about peaks and troughs. Okay, so there are going to be the times when symptoms are going to peak, and times they're going to have troughs, like they're going to go away and you're going to feel amazing. In those troughs, don't get cocky, don't say, oh, I'm immediately better, and then start exercising or something too much. You can do something gentle like Tai Chi or something, or gentle moving exercises, but you don't want to like move around erratically cleaning or something like that, because that's going to basically wear you down, and you're not going to have recovery time, because then when you get symptoms again kicking up, instead of having recovery time, you're going to go through even more exhausting things. And then if in the troughs you keep exhausting yourself, you're going to have a rougher time. So make sure that you treat those troughs like you would the rounds in a boxing match. You know, when they have a minute to rest, you make sure you be productive with that time. You use that time the best you have for the next peak. From what I experienced, the first peak was the worst for me. The second peak was a bit longer, and then but a little bit better, because I could handle it better, but also because the symptoms weren't as severe. And then I had sort of continuous symptoms that did come off and on, but were sort of manageable, where I could watch TV and just relax and that sort of thing. Then later on, able to actually do some work, able to actually speak a little bit, so that's good. And then as you come out of it, it might actually peak again. So for me, had some pretty bad fevers last night and that sort of thing. Like I said, fevers are a good thing, so try to sit through them and be patient with them, rather than taking a paracetamol to lower the fever right away. And then hopefully it goes free and clear. Now, there's different durations of this disease, and I would say that because it's not native to like human beings, that's really why it's going to stay in the body so long, because it's going to be hard to find and hard to remove completely by your immune system. So it's going to take some time. It's going to take, a month or something like that. So I've had these symptoms for the past 10 to 12 days, so almost 2 weeks. It's been over 2 weeks since I was infected, which is an interesting story actually, because I was like, how the heck was I infected? And it really puzzled me, because I only went to the supermarket and I only went to one meeting with somebody who wasn't infected at the time. So I was like, how did I catch it? I have no idea. There was nobody in my house that had it before me. Basically it came down to me being on the street, and there was a man in front of me who was coughing, and he was like 10 meters ahead of me. And I was like, why is that dude coughing so much? And I tried to cover my face and sort of stuff. But we were walking under this bridge, so I couldn't cross the road, and I just kept following behind him, and I was like, oh great, hope I don't get sick from this. And then I'm pretty sure that's actually how I got it. So I'm like, oh, okay, great. So just hanging around behind someone when I had that bad gut feeling like, this is maybe something to, just the strange things that come up, the unusual things, they can sometimes be the way that it gets you, I guess. That said, for people with anxiety, I just want to say something to them. When it comes to your anxiety and feeling off about this disease, turn it into something productive. So if you fear the disease, get active in preventing it. Don't think, oh, there's cracks everywhere, there's nothing I can do to stop it. Just treat it like a almost military exercise or a job. How would you go about sterilizing a place that you work, or how would you go about sterilizing a hospital room or something like that? And how would you go about the procedures and controls? If you get things in control, then there's no need to get anxious. If, like me, you segment it into 3 different parts, the symptoms, analyzing the symptoms you have, the severity of the symptoms, how long they last for, you keep a notebook on that, you can sort of understand exactly what your condition is and understand it really well, and understand where it's going from that. Then you check for complications. So you make sure you do your checks, or you have your devices to be able to check. So for example, I had blood sugar device to check my blood sugar to make sure that was handled and that I wasn't going to have more complications with that. I had a heart rate monitor, so I knew when my heart rate was 125, or when it was 95, or when it went back to normal. I also knew my blood saturation, because I had like this little monitor on my phone, so I knew when it got down to 96, that was the time to be vigilant, because if it gets below 95, you start getting in trouble. If it's like 92, definitely need the hospital, you need some oxygen. So you just need to counter whatever fears you have with facts. You need to counter whatever feeling of not having control with professionalism. So if you be professional about the way that you react to things, you're going to react that much better. You're going to prevent it that much more, and you're going to have much better results. And in the end, yes, you do not want this disease, so social distancing, all that sort of stuff is a good idea. And if like your roommates coming in, coming out, and they're not paying attention to anything, sterilize your room. And when you go out of your room, make sure you clean what you're going to use and that sort of thing, and stay as hygienic as possible as you're doing your thing there. And that's probably going to hold you through it, because like I said, that this disease has to follow the physical rules, and as a result, there's ways for us to stop it, slow it down, whether it be through these measures or quarantine measures and all that sort of thing. It's a really good idea, because it's really important we stop this disease and don't have it continue to proliferate in the population for a long time, because that would be a very bad idea. Because basically you just don't know what happens with this kind of disease as it gets more used to humans. It could turn into something really negative, or it could turn into something mild. We just don't know, and it's not worth flipping that coin. So it's really important to keep everybody safe, especially the elderly. Them getting hit by these kind of symptoms, oh no, it's a very, very, very dangerous disease. Very dangerous, not like the flu. It's very dangerous. It's also very upsetting to be affected for such a long time. 2 weeks. It's not an enjoyable thing. But I don't want you to like freak out and be like, oh my god, I can't get through. you're gonna get through it. It's gonna be all right. You measure your symptoms, make sure there's no complications, and then hope for the best outcomes in those situations. And that's what you can do. Like I said, fever's good. Make sure to drink a lot of water though, and nourish yourself when you're feeling good in the troughs. Don't exert yourself. And then once it gets to you having to deal with the symptoms, stay focused. Get along with it as best you can, so that you can be vigilant and improve your outcomes that way. So that's what I wanted to say. So instead of coming to you from the hospital, I'm instead coming to you from outdoors in the sun, which is nice. So spring's coming, and it's here. I'm not sure. Yeah, so that's a good thing. And yeah, so hopefully we can just we'll get through it. It's no problem, but it's a really rough disease. It's something that's going to knock about, especially the elderly people. We've got to be very careful, cautious, vigilant with it, and basically treat it like our nation is sick, or the globe is sick, like humanity is sick. We've got to treat it with care. We've got to be vigilant, and we've got to make sure that it gets better. We don't want to be like, oh, yeah, let's just have this out there in humanity. It's not a good idea. Let's just make sure humanity gets better, and get through it. And then I'm sure all the complications coming from stock markets and this and that, all that's probably going to improve once the disease goes away. Just like if you're at a job and you're self-employed like I am, you're not making any money while you're sick, and then you come back to work and then you're like, okay, I'm good again. So I'd assume the same thing would happen with society as well. So once we come back online, we'll come back kicking. So yeah, that's basically it. And keep safe out there. Keep sane. All right. Have a good one.